when I'm provided zero information and then I get a reconsideration of value and there's 12 comps. So that's frustrating. It's oftentimes, I would say it's 50-50 that I even actually am able to make contact with an agent. It's usually, it'll be a response of book on showing time. Okay, that's fine with me. I have no issues with that. But yes, when they come in, when there's a reconsideration of value and then there's all of these comps, that would have been nice to have up front because I would have reviewed those. I can also say most of the time I have come back with, if there's a reconsideration of value, there's a property that I missed, by all means, like I will adjust accordingly. When there's an oversight of the fact that I've already used all of those comps in the report and you didn't actually, that was the last reconsideration of value I had. They came back with the comps that I had utilized in the report, and it's read the report. You didn't even open the report to know that every single comp that you've just given me has already been analyzed and is in the report.
I could totally see agents doing that, not even looking and just being like, here's the comps I used, not giving it a lot of thought.
And but I am always, I honestly, whenever I'm speaking with an agent and they're receptive, I'm receptive, I let them know you're hopefully the expert in your market that you're selling a house. Hopefully you've done your research. The house has been on the market for 88 days. You should have some valid information at this point. And I'm open to additional information. I'm open to learning from other people in the field. It has to go about both ways.
I think another really good thing to touch on, if they don't already bring this up in question, is what are concessions doing to values, just because we've seen so many concessions nowadays, or again.
So in terms of you might already know this, but concessions are taken off of the sold price to bring it to a cash equivalent market price. So if a property has $20,000 in concessions and sold for $520,000, the actual market cash equivalent is $500,000. So typically
I think that's good for them to know, like just those little tidbits, because especially with so many new agents got into the market over the last couple of years. And excuse me, I just don't know that they know those things. Excuse me.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other really large kind of pressure on us from the appraisal side is to use data that's no older than 90 days because of the interest rates just slowly increasing and massively different than a year ago and even more so 2 years ago.
That's a great point, because I would have thought it's always 6 months of data.
Ideally, they want all three comps that we give the most weight to within 90 days.
Great info. And real quick, Jamie, have a little bit of more of that background. We know 1,000 appraisals, less than 2% show up, which is a crazy number. How long have you been appraising for?
I have been appraising I was certified in 2018 and it was a 2-year apprenticeship.
Really since 2016.
Yes.
Yeah. And off topic, on topic, we know you love Banksy. You and I talked about mindfulness. We've shared some book. Who is Jamie?
Jamie is evolving on a daily basis. I feel like I'm learning more and more, but I really do enjoy traveling. Just personally, I enjoy traveling and surrendering this whole, like, just being open and evolving. And I think the biggest thing is really just being more open. I think this is my goal for 2024.
So would you say you have a word of the year?
Word of the year, yes.
Is it opening or surrendering or?
Yes, I think so.
I love it.
I do.
What is your gauge on the overall market? What would you say? Because to me, I have my opinions about the market, but what would you say is the log jam in the market right now as an appraiser and a member of NAR?
I think that the listings I see, if they're listed 10,000 under what the true value, they will sell. I think that they're staying on the market longer. I think people are scared. And honestly, I think I am very vocal about right now is the time to buy. I know it's scary. Interest rates are high. You can always refinance. You got to play for the long game. Right now, buyers aren't paying 50,000 over list price because interest rates are 2%. This is a great time for people to get into the market and actually buy a home that's worth the, true value. And then it's a lull, like it's very cyclical. And I think as an agent could really inform potential buyers of that, give them kind of that confidence. I myself personally bought within the last 5 months. I'm like, but I didn't have 50 people competing against me for the same home. So you have negotiating power as a buyer. It's I think a really great time for people who are interested in purchasing.
And that's a great lens coming from an appraiser, not from what the consumers may feel like that's a message from a realtor. Oh, you just want me to buy a house, but this is someone coming from a data point as to the value of the property based on the data points you use to appraise homes. That's definitely great insight about market for sure.
Yeah. I
Cool.
think
I'm gonna
we
take
can.
a quick 30. I'm gonna go get a refill. Let the two of you chat. I'm just gonna go get a quick refill, and then we're about 5 minutes out. And we'll see. It's 5 minutes out. I got Vincente, and then right now. But I've always been of the ilk that like I might give a minute or two, but I value time. But that's why Natalie will ask also, you help me watching the waiting room because they might be dripping in. And we'll just roll with it. It's 16, but I know Jim Chimino from Fidelity said he can't join, but he's Fidelity title. And we'll just watch it. And either way, if it turns out to be a small gathering, or even if it's just Vincente, he's going to have an open floor with you. I'll be right
Right.
back in a minute.
Okay.
I always wanted to be an appraiser, Jamie. I think that's pretty
What do
easy. What? Go ahead.
wait. Are you a listing agent?
No, I'm a lender. I'm in mortgage. Yeah. So I've been in mortgage for a long time, for about 23 years. I did have a real estate license for 12 years, but I let it go when I decided to originate and do the sales part. So I let that go. But I did when I was younger, I was always like, I should just go be an appraiser too. And I just think, I don't know, you make your own schedule, right?
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. You
Yeah.
can do it. I think if it's something that you always wanted to do, I think absolutely go for it.
But do you think it's going away? Do you think appraisers are going to be gone because of
I
all the like valuation models and stuff?
Yeah. I feel like I've heard that since I started.
Okay.
What do you think on your side, the lending side? I think ultimately it would be how confident lending would feel in an automated system.
I go back and forth on it. I do think you find more and more that things are automated, right? But anytime anything goes wrong, it's always, no, let's go back to people.
Yeah. It's interesting. So just for my own info on my Excel spreadsheet, I put the appraised value versus the Zestimate, right? Everything was estimate. And oftentimes it's off because they don't know what the interior condition of the house is. There's
Right.
one, there's one I'm going to do today in Morrison. The Zestimate is like 600,000. But this guy purchased it back in 1960 something. He's getting it reversed. And he hasn't done any updates.
Oh,
So I
gee.
highly doubt that it's worth $600,000.
Okay.
So things like that, I think, but ultimately it's going to be the lender if they decide that the automated information is enough to
Valid.
kind of alone that lending decision on it. I think it could get us in trouble again if we ended up going fully automated, just for reasons like that. I'm expecting this to be like crazy because he's already told me there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
About in 1960, it's 2024, 64 years later, I'd say, yeah, there might be a lot of work that needs to be done,
Yeah.
with no updates. That's very cool, very interesting.
9:59.
She's a really special, unique individual that I've gotten to know over coffee. I'm blessed to have her joining us, but really knowledgeable. So Wes, same thing for you. Vincent
Great.
Day also for you as well, because this is what this is all about, right? Like we all are on a team. But at the end of the day, if there's a tripod, and we don't have title in here, but that would become a chair, but then a tripod on this call yields the success our clients have or the experience they face based on the work we all do individually, but then collectively for them to buy and sell homes. That's what was probably the spirit behind wanting to do this. But Jamie, we talked about this for what, 3 months? I mean, Deb, you heard me talk about it. I think Wes, I might have mentioned it to you in passing, but I'm just blessed that Jamie was able to find time in her schedule. Yeah, it took a few months to get this going, for schedules, holidays, all of that. Guys, Jamie is, all I can say is we met through an appraisal that she was doing for a buyer. It was a short-term rental in Evergreen, I think. And she taught a friend of ours who's very experienced something about GLA that he didn't know. And he told me that. And I was like, I need to talk to her. So I called her and the introduction was made, and there was just a definite synergy right away. She comes with a vast amount of experience, but probably more cooler than that is she loves to travel. She's growth minded. I think we might have uncorked her word of the year, which might be surrender or open going forward. But she's been at this since really 2016 by way of the dental world and education. So teaching the top of her field in the dental space. I want to share a really cool thing with you, and I'm going to turn this over to Jamie, that she told me of over 1,000 appraisals she's done. 2% of y'all have met her at a home.
What?
Yes, wild, right? Y'all are here for a reason, so y'all would be likely to meet her. 2%, so we could do the math. 2% of 1,000 is not much, right?
Some of the things that we have discussed and touched on are there's some misconceptions about maybe above grade and below grade. So we have certain regulations that we have to follow. Anything that is even, if it's visibly even 2 inches below grade, that's considered basement. And how this kind of translates for listing agents is when you're putting the information into MLS, it's really important to separate that out, because if it's all listed as above grade square footage, oftentimes that property can be overlooked as a viable comp. I think that is a really large, I think getting accurate data into MLS so that we're getting true comps for your listing is key. The other kind of really big thing that I would stress is if you get an appraisal and let's say county says it's 1,800 square feet, and oftentimes an appraisal does have a larger square footage because we are instructed to take measurements from the exterior. When the county assessor goes to take the measurements, it's usually the footprint of the house. So it can be several hundred shy of what my exterior measurements will be if we're talking about with stone veneer and stucco. That adds exterior inches on the measurement, especially if you're going on all sides. If you get an appraisal and that it's larger than what you have in the public record, I would update your MLS So then when I go to use that comp, the appraisal trumps whatever the county data says. So updating that way is really helpful also. And then we were talking also about ceiling heights. This is how Ray and I met. Whenever you have a sloped roof, the ceiling height needs to be a minimum of 7 feet for it to be considered living square footage. If it is 7 feet at the highest point, then I can only measure from 5 feet high wall to wall. So if it's your A-frame and it's 7 feet, so it is good. I can only go 5 feet high wall to wall, and that would be considered your actual living space. So that can change your GLA, your square footage, and also your comps potentially. Does any of that make sense, or is there any confusion on any of that?
So that could
Makes-
affect homes in central Denver, right? Like Cap Hill, where you
That's
have
exactly.
these
It's usually the
upstairs
older
areas.
those older homes, those same with basements. Oftentimes with basements, if it's not 7 feet high, we're still using it as living space, right? So I would say it's very rare for me to take a below grade finished in the same manner as the above grade and adjust it any differently than I would above grade. That's the way we use it in Colorado. We have legitimate basements here. But you have to realize people in California are thinking basements as tornado shelter, like cellars. It's just something to be mindful of. It's just the measurements that we have to follow, the guidelines we have to follow for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that with attic conversions, where you see the attic converted into extra bedroom or bedrooms and might not have very much space. It's above 7 feet, especially if it's a pitched roof. Probably a lot of misunderstandings there where you're seeing living square footage marketed as one thing, but the appraiser can only consider a smaller amount living square footage.
Hopefully there's open dialogue with just the team. I think at the end of the day, the goal is to put the property in the buyer's hand. That's my goal too. I never want a deal to go south because there's just misunderstandings. That's never the goal.
Jamie, let me ask you a question. Do you feel that's a misconception? Do you feel that's something that's changed in the appraiser community? What's your thoughts there about what you just said? Because I think what you just said is very valuable to me as a lender, right? I've made that phone call and received both sides of the tails of the tape, as you might say. But what's your feedback to that? Is that a generational appraiser change, or
I think it is definitely generational. Personally, it's a good old boys club. It is what it is. That's the way it's been historically. And I think there is change happening for the best. I don't think that it's quite the same mentality anymore. I feel like the appraisers that I've met are similar in age to me and they have a similar open mind. We can learn from each other. I think the goal is somebody's trying to buy a home. They want the home. You want to sell them home. We want to just help facilitate selling a home.
so we almost have to take off our hat of past experience and stay open to change, open to even in y'all's world. As a lender, I'm constantly dealing with change. Y'all in the agent side, they are as well with this markets. So then I would say is it fair to say we need to take off our hat and say it's 2024 lenders, 2024 agent. Let's not have those blinders on from maybe prior experiences. Yeah.
I love that. I think that would be great. I think it would be fantastic. Like moving forward, if there were more collaborative groups such as this, I think that it should really be more of a team approach. They've kept us so isolated and almost against each other. And it really shouldn't be that way.
I mean, I recall, love the man, but I recall Obama speaking. I watched him on TV call out loan originators as the reason for the housing crisis. I was like, wow, Obama, thanks, brother. I didn't know I had that much power.
Just
So yeah, I think putting on our lens that it's 2024, and I agree with you that they kept us separated. It was always a challenge for me because it was a resource that I could go to an appraiser and say, these folks need to refinance. Do you think this value might come in? And not having that, then you're left with data and you're left with algorithms and you're left with analytics, which we've already seen that there's still more strength in the human brain, what computers can do, because they can't adjust for a house that hasn't been updated in over 60 years per se.
absolutely.
I would ask in terms of what you're discussing here that I am one of the agents that goes to meet the appraiser with an overview of how my client and I got to the purchase price, how the potential interest in the property got us to the contract price, and simply provide it and in there. But it's always like walking on eggshells that I'm there to do my job. They're there to do their job. And I would say, of the folks I meet, I would say maybe half are interested in a conversation and the other half are mad I'm there.
I want to apologize for the people who are
Well, look, not all the agents are great
Right.
either. So look, it's not, we're always trying to improve ourselves. At least I am. And this group is. So I guess my question to you would be, what do you think is the best approach for those of us meeting the agents at our listings? What do you think is our best approach to create that collaboration that you're chatting about just a moment ago?
I think it's a great question. And I was also discussing with Ray and Natalie. Personally, I embrace the information that you have. Bring the data to support your list price, to support your contract price. I think, like you said, it's half. Maybe if you would have thought about this 20 years ago, it probably would have been like 85%. So I think it is a change. I think you should keep doing exactly what you do because you're doing the right thing. I think at the end of the day, what you're doing is valuable and it is appreciated to the person who's going to be receptive to it. And of course, not everyone's going to be receptive. When you bring information, it needs to be valuable. So I guess with that being said, we cannot pick comps based on closed prices. And I feel like not always, but there's a misconception where I'm getting a CMA and it's literally based off of closed prices. It doesn't matter if there's 1,000 square foot GLA difference. If it's sold at this price, this is the price I'm going for. That's invalid. At the time that I meet an agent, I'm usually not reviewing that information right then and there. But the most valid thing you can do is we have parameters that we have to cover. Our GLA can ideally be no larger or no smaller than by 20%. So I think that's a big thing that needs to be a big key of the information that you bring.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing I see is huge GLA differences, but it supports your contract price. But that's fantastic. And even when doing like a reconsideration of value, like it needs to still be valid information. And in order for it to be valid, it has to have about that 20% difference on either side. And I say keep doing what you're doing. I think the fact that you're meeting them and you're bringing your knowledge to help assist it's going to change. It's changing. And so you're going to have those that aren't as receptive, but hopefully we
Get
continue.
better.
Yeah. Some evolution in that.
Thank you.
Jamie, I'd like to ask you to touch on something that I've talked with appraisers about, and appraisals like staff appraisers, etc., which is related to time adjustment of time. If there's not like this one doesn't have comps, so is there a point where a time adjustment can be made if the comp set is like when there's less sales happening or something like that? Is that something that comes into effect for you? Property
Yeah.
sells 9 months ago, 12 months ago. Technically, we're trying for 3 months, but if there's not data, how should that be handled by an agent?
Bring what you have. If it's valid, we will make the adjustments on our side for the time. I don't know, bringing something from 12 months ago would be helpful today. I don't think that's going to be, I don't want to say it's a decline, because truly things are coming back to their actual value. I think there was a huge inflation with the lower interest rates. But I don't think giving data from 10, 11 months ago is going to work in the favor of what you're trying to achieve at this point in time.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. You touched on something before we got on today, which was about your feelings of the state of the market through the lens of a buyer. Well, you touched on what you did 6 months ago, and we talk about it, right? And we talk about it's a good time to buy. Share your lens as an appraiser that might help them as they talk to clients. Say, listen, I talked to this appraiser. This is what she had to say about timing the market.
Yes, I think you guys need to really inform your potential buyers that it is a great time to buy. I understand interest rates are higher than they were. Really, they're not high if we look historically, but you, as a buyer, there's negotiating power there. I'm seeing houses that are selling under list price versus selling 50,000 over list price. They're able to have the option to choose between property A and B and not have this bidding war. So I think offering them the insight of, you're temporarily in this interest rate, let's say, let's hope they go down again, but they're only going to go up. We can just I think generally speaking, over time, we just see them go up, and then it's this cycle. It'll come back down. But right now, a great time for people to buy. I was telling Ray that I just bought, and I didn't have to compete, and I was able to get 20 grand off of the sales price. And so I think just giving that perspective, I think there's a lot of hesitation. People are a little scared and hopeful that things are going to go back to 2%. I don't know that I would foresee that happening anytime soon. Not that I'm a fortune teller, but it's better than renting. Rent's outrageous right now. It's just a good time. I think it's a great time.
Well,
One thing that
that's beautiful hearing that from an appraiser. Go ahead, Wes.
if I can, one thing I'm starting to see in highly desirable areas and appropriately priced homes is multiple offers and offer prices going above asking, not to the extreme that we saw in end of 21 or end of 20 in 21 and beginning of 22. One that kind of leads me to a question: how much can you as an appraiser take multiple offers into consideration when you have let's, for example, a house that gets 10 offers and 7 of them are over asking by 5 to 10%, and then they go with the highest one, and the listing agent's able to provide you with a contract that shows that all the contracts showing buyer willingness to go above list price. I've never seen that written into a appraisal report. So how are you able to utilize that to help justify contract price or getting closer to it?
That's a good question. So it has to be supported. We have to have a comp that does support that. And I understand I would say that you're listed low. Honestly, I'm like, if you're going that high over list price at this point, but oh, it's a tough one. You can't take hypothetical scenarios that 10 people are going to buy this house. And so this person's going to purchase it for 10% over list price. It has to be hard data. There have to be closed sales. It has to be supported. So if you can find that one that actually is like, this is going to support this contract price, awesome. If not, I'd say prep your buyer by saying, hey, you know what? Awesome. You want to buy this house. Are you willing to come in with an appraisal gap? Like, people are doing that. It was insane during 2020, 21. It's just maybe prepping your buyer for just, this could happen. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I have all this information I'm going to provide, and everybody, I can tell you, I pull my hair out trying to make sure that I can make it work. For sure. That the last thing I want is a phone call from an unhappy agent, because that's not fun either. But I would say prepping the buyer, if they're willing to spend that much more over something that we know is valued at $500,000, but they want to spend $520,000. Awesome. Thought it's fantastic for you. Just, you're going to have to make up that difference, because the value is what it is.
Can I tag on to that in terms of a question in regards to how is a multiple offer situation where I have contracts in hand of people willing to spend, we'll call it that 25,000 over example that you used. How is that hypothetical? I have those contracts in my hand. Those buyers are willing to do that. To me, that's hypothetical. That's the market telling me what's driving as basic supply and demand.
So I guess the question is, how many contracts have you seen fall through?
Roughly at this point, it's somewhere between 20 and 30%, but I can simply have one contract and that can happen, but I can also have 10 contracts and that can happen. So in terms of looking what's in that contract, and my conversation with the lender on that deal will help me try to solidify that, but life happens. So I guess to me, that's not necessarily hypothetical. It's real, because that's what's happening in the market on a regular basis. So I'm just questioning that
So I'm sorry.
for that an appraiser isn't seeing the value of that information.
It's not, okay. So you said 20 to 30% of contracts fall through.
That's what it is right now. In general, it's been somewhere between probably 10 and 15, but right now it's between 20 and 30.
Sure. I know. And that's information that you have on your side. So the fact is that it's not the appraiser doesn't see the value. It's that the data doesn't provide the value. It's not me not seeing value in it. I understand there is a supply and demand. I understand that this is the one house that all of these people want at this time in the market, but it is what it is. We can only use hard facts. That's it. I can't make up information. I can't use 10 contracts where 3 people are going to walk away from it. It's just not tangible information. It has to be tangible data and info. And I feel, and you guys as the agents like Deb, do you feel like people are offering over list like at this point in time?
Yes.
And are you
Yeah.
having issues with the appraisals coming in?
I personally have not, but I'm also, depending on what my specific situation is for my clients, I am also looking for that willingness for the appraisal gap. I think right now, and maybe Wes or anyone else who's on here can speak to it. Right now, if we do have a multiple offer situation, we're not seeing that ridiculous amount of over asking that we were before. If it's 500,000, maybe it's somewhere between 5 and 10,000 over asking. It's not a ton. So, or what they're asking for might be the buy down as something like that, adding up to get a buy down. So it's not as bad as it was, that's for sure. But some indications are that we're going to see things leaning a little bit that direction as we move into the spring market here. More than I think people thought, at least.
Yeah,
Is that
if I
right,
could,
or Wes?
yeah, one thing that I'm certainly anticipating that because we're seeing it now, and we haven't seen any real movement or improvement in rates. And what my inclination is that the rate fatigue for buyers is starting to wear off, and the need for housing is starting to surpass the shock of what the payment is. It just is what it is now. And for whatever reason, families are growing, people are getting married, things are causing people to want to buy, and they just don't want to hold off anymore. So I think any real movement in rates is going to exacerbate the buyer demand. And Jamie, what I'm hearing from you is, as much as you would love to say, hey, you've got 10 offers that are all 10% over asking, so that must be the right price. Here's an appraisal that says so. That's just not a data point that you can put into an appraisal, because that's just the nature of how appraisals are put together. So I have a question that's the flip side of that. I've seen some significant people get some houses significantly under asking and under what I would think the market would bear, 20, 30, 50, $75,000 below what a house was listed for, or what a house seems like it could have sold for maybe 2 years ago. And then appraisals coming back at or right around contract price. And I've told buyers, listen, and this may or may not be true, but I've always been under the impression that an appraiser is not going to allow an appraisal to get inflated too much above contract price, because that could potentially raise red flags with a lender. If a lender may wonder, is this an arm's length deal with an appraisal that's $100,000 over asking on a $600,000 purchase? Is there any truth to that matter?
I think there is. Yeah, I think there is some. Yes, there's one I can think of that I did come in over the list and contract price. And yes, what happens that probably you don't see on your side is we get kicked back in terms of if it's not. So I would get kicked back for on your side whenever it's under. If it's over, then I get kicked back on the lender side saying, "What about all of these properties? Did you consider these?" And so that happens too. And it's this kind of dance. It's just trying to balance all the pieces. But I mean, yes, ultimately, yes, there are red flags, and they will provide us with additional comps that we should review to reconsider the value.
All right. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll share a story on that. I actually had one. This property's on Park Avenue, Arapahoe in Denver. Appraiser calls me and says, I don't know what to do. I'm like, oh God. Now I'm going to have to call people and tell it doesn't appraise. And she's, no, the least I can appraise this for is $100,000 over list. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's, yeah. So new construction, row home, times how many units, builder got smoked. Yeah. The market's not moving like that right now, but that was $1 million mistake by a builder, because that was one unit of the 12 units. So I hear what you're saying, Jamie. And yeah, y'all, and then you have the intermediary, that I will call intermediary, which is the appraisal management company between us and you all, because they don't want Obama's villain to take down the housing market again. So you all are also working through the AMCs as well. And maybe just quickly touch on that experience for you, like working through an AMC, helpful, hurtful, indifferent.
I think it's awful, honestly. I don't know on your side how it works, but there's a delay. I think that's the biggest thing, especially for the agent's trying to close a house. I will receive phone calls and the agent is the buyer and everybody's ready to go. And I'm like, it was submitted 24 hours ago. And then it's like the lender has to call the AMC. And then it's just this game of telephone that gets so convoluted. It's insane. And then the other thing that I'm really on the appraisal side is frustrating is they blame us for everything. And I have seen emails from lenders from the AMC saying that it's where our shortcoming is, or we didn't submit it, or we didn't do this. And I have the email with my confirmation that I submitted it. So it's just, it's a whole lot of finger pointing. I'm not a fan, but this is what we have to deal with.
So they've added red tape
Yes.
because it's eliminated the transparency that I can just be like, hey, when will we have that back? Or, hey, this one had peeling paint. It's FHA. Can you go out for the final? No, you need to call the AMC
Yes.
to
Yes.
schedule that. And then we got to wait for the AMC to go to you to respond to them. So I would 100% as a lender say, I hear you. You are heard. That isn't making things quicker. And I call it friction because we know Amazon eliminated friction for consumers. And I think of that as friction for the process myself. So thank you for shedding some light on that as well.
Quick question for yourself and the appraiser. Like everyone else had mentioned, I go ahead and meet the appraiser over there and I bring comps and updates and upgrades. One extra thing that I do, and I don't know how you feel about this, I also print out a 1004 MC that's available in our MLS. What can you tell me about that? Is that something useful for you as an appraiser?
I think it's useful if the data is useful. The biggest takeaway would be it needs to be useful data. Yes, I will absolutely utilize all information. There are some agents who are very keen to what we're looking for, and they'll bring exactly what they use, which is exactly what I need, and it's seamless. But if I have data that is just substantially different in terms of GLA, bathroom count is a big one. I can't use it. It's just like garbage in, garbage out. It has to be valuable. It has to support the characteristics of the subject property, not the contract price.
Okay. As I would say as a lender for a pre-qual, garbage in, garbage out, it just depends on the validity of any said data. I can pre-qual anybody until I get their documents. And that could change the story. So I think that's valuable. It's a valuable share. Did that help you?
Yeah, it definitely does. Thank you.
A quick question. This is Monica. Is there a standard amount that you use to count for the value of a garage?
It does depend on market to market, really. 10 to 15,000 per stall. Just generally, if you're working like track homes are really an easy way to evaluate any differences, but generally speaking, 10 to 15, just depending on the market where your property is located.
Okay, thank you.
Because it could be more in like downtown Denver where there's no homes with garages, but then this one's selling for 50,000 more because it has a garage. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. As someone who dwells in the city, yes. There is value there. Jamie, I cannot thank you enough for sharing some of your valuable time today. Thank you. I look forward to connecting with you guys all again here. Direction of race right now. Hal's in charge. So according to my data, I would say this. Dude ain't dropping rates anytime soon. I don't care what they say about May. I don't think it's happening in May. Wes, you have an economics degree. Do you think it's happening in May?
I would agree with you. I don't think we're going to see rate cuts anytime soon, especially with the employment data that's come out. We'll see. And even if the Fed does start dropping rates, I'm not sure that we'll see that trickle down into mortgages quickly. My big concern for the end of this year and next is about buyers who got 2-1 buy downs that are going to have trouble with affordability when they lose that 2 point, when the 2 drops to 1, and especially if the 1 drops to none, if they were already at the top of what they could afford with the buy down.
That's already in effect, right? Because we've already seen the first adjustment for people who bought last winter, right? I am in active communication with those people. I am in 100% active communication because right now I could probably get them to where they're at today. But then we have to teach them how much of a risk taker are you? Because now they're gambling with their future. If they wait it out and rates don't go down, and they could have gotten the rate that's the same as what it is now, but it's not as good as what it was 12 months ago. How do they feel? And so I'm just staying in open dialogue with my clients that did close on the buy downs. If y'all worked with me, that I was always a fan of the permanent buy down to begin with. But you guys have a great day. Catch up with you soon.